and welcome to GRTV Channel 25, Grand Rapids Public Access. My name is Kate Glossop. Our show tonight is called Injustice Now, Exploring the Dakota Access Pipeline. We have a panel gathered tonight to discuss a few different aspects of the Dakota Access Pipeline and its impact on the environment, on people across the United States, and specifically on the Standing Rock tribe in North Dakota. On our panel tonight, we have Janie O'Donnell, who has a master's in public health from Brown, and she will be talking a little bit about the impact of pipelines on public health tonight. We have Grant Kammer, who is a student of sustainable business at Aquinas College. He will be talking to us a little bit about the environmental impact of pipelines on environments. And we have Phyllis Davis, who is an elected official from the Gun Lake Band of Potawatomi Indians, and she's going to be talking to us. She has some really great perspective. She's been out to Sacred Stone Camp, and she's been connecting with a lot of different tribe members from all kinds of different bands, and has some really great sort of global perspective for us tonight. We'll also be hearing from a friend of mine who is out at the Sacred Stone Camp right now. Her name is Wania Whipping Braids Locke. She will be giving us some more information on how you specifically can help the Sacred Stone Camp, what you can do for the movement, and if that's not being physically present out at the camp, what you can do in order to help from right where you are. So we're going to kick tonight off with sort of some entry-level information about pipelines and their effect on the environment, sort of about their success rates, and just sort of their impact on people, and more specifically on water sources as they relate to people. So for that, we turn to Grant Kammer.
Thank you very much. So this particular pipeline is a little more than 1,000 miles. It will run from the Bakken and Three Forks oil production areas in North Dakota to the oil processing plants in Patoka, Illinois. The plan is to transport about 470,000 barrels of oil a day. That's about half of the daily crude oil production in Bakken. And the main reasons for this pipeline are economic. Compared to rail travel and truck travel, which are the other methods of crude oil transportation, it's a lot more cost effective. Those methods of transportation can be anywhere from $30 to $50 per barrel. Do
you happen to know the difference in sort of size of the Keystone Pipeline and the Dakota Access Pipeline?
No, unfortunately. Yeah.
I was just curious.
It's a particularly long one. This one's an underground pipeline as well, which has significant implications in that it can't necessarily be maintained as well as an above ground pipeline. It can't be as properly monitored as well.
Mm-hmm. Also, this pipeline is owned by Dakota Access LLC, which is a subsidiary of a company called Energy Transfer Partners, which is a partner with Sunoco and Phillips 66.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and the other main incentive for building a pipeline like this is it's considered safer when compared to train and truck transportation. The analogy is that flying is safer than driving, but when a plane crashes, it crashes catastrophically. So when a pipeline fails, it fails catastrophically.
Okay.
Even though statistically there will be, it's less common, but it has significant damages.
Okay. What's sort of the impact on direct environment of a burst pipeline?
So an environment affected by an oil spill will never be the same. No matter what they try to do to repair the damage done by an oil spill, that damage will always be there. If you think back to the Kalamazoo oil spill recently, that ecosystem has still not recovered. It likely will never recover. Those toxins will remain in that soil for generations to come, likely indefinitely. The main problem being that the techniques used to clean an oil spill are largely just collecting surface oil, spraying chemical dispersants, and then allowing that oil to settle on the bottom where it can't be seen. And if it can't be seen, then they kind of walk away from it. And what's worse is that those dispersants make those toxins more bioavailable. They're more easily absorbed into organisms, which can be consumed by human beings.
What about the effect on water sources? Because I know one of the huge issues with Dakota Access Pipeline is that it crosses water sources I think it crosses 200 times water sources. The main ones being like the Missouri River, Lake Oahe, and I think those are the big ones that I know.
Yeah. If there were to be a leak and it were to contaminate the Missouri River, there are 26 million people downstream who would likely be affected by an oil spill such as that. Another problem is because it is an underground pipeline, if it were to break and it weren't be detected in time, it's likely that it could contaminate an underground aquifer, which are the main sources of drinking water. And once those aquifers are contaminated, there's no way to remove those contaminants.
Yeah, and it's being built directly upstream of the Oglala Aquifer, which is one of the largest aquifers in the States. Yeah.
Once a water table is contaminated, it will be contaminated indefinitely, unfortunately.
I was reading up on sort of the the Environmental Protection Agency and what they have to do when they survey before they do pipelines. And it's said the U.S. Department of the Interior, they say, has failed to consult tribes on the environmental impact of their lands. I'm wondering if you know anything about sort of the environmental law that's going on.
Unfortunately, from what I know, this operation is legal, but it's.
Can I interject?
Please.
Of course.
It's, the permits were done, but they weren't appropriate. There wasn't a total environmental
It was very
assessment.
speedy.
There were a lot of hoops that the Army Corps of Engineers were able to jump through. There's also a process called eminent domain that allows agencies, private entities to assume for the natural good or cause, if it's utilities, whatever. And so they have, I believe, a different point of access. Plus, when you think about the hundreds of thousands of dollars that lobbyists are going to pour into Washington, D.C. to assure that their processes and what they're looking at for a final outcome are going to occur. There's a lot more political pressure provided back, a little bit more of a lean towards an agency to assist. You know, for the tribes, the opportunity for that tribal consultation is an inherent right. It's a right that is bound by the Constitution. A Constitution of the United States, and so they have violated their rights. Their chairman of the Standing Rock Sioux Nation has consistently advocated and addressed these issues on an almost daily basis. That the access was wrong, the permitting was wrong, the acknowledgement of sacred sites, of burial grounds, sacred burial grounds, you know, all of these things have been jumped over. And so the issue for and I'm just gonna stop in a minute here, but the issue for many tribes across the country is coming into this point of tribal sovereignty and supporting tribes that are going up against the United States government or those agencies that are infringing on the rights of people whose treaties have been violated. And we are supporting the Standing Rock Sioux Nation to assure that their rights are supported, that their rights are acknowledged, that the federal government and those agencies hear them. So, you know, there's a lot happening there.
something particularly alarming that is sort of being usurped. I found this Executive Order 12898 on environmental justice mandates that all agencies must determine if a proposed project disproportionately impacts tribal communities. That's an executive order. And from my understanding is that the Dakota Access Pipeline was originally planned to cross the Missouri River north of Bismarck. And
Yes.
the people of Bismarck.
Yes, they were concerned. They were concerned that there could be a break in the pipeline and
A predominantly
and
white U.S. capital.
you know, pollute their water systems, their drinking water systems. So they requested it to be moved south.
And the pipeline, the Dakota Access LLC then released saying that they wanted to move the pipeline to avoid populated areas.
Yes, less populated.
Yes, instead of crossing upriver of the capital. Oh, yes, very alarming.
Definitely.
Grant, what do you think sort of in the larger picture of our dependence on fossil fuels, this new huge pipeline being built, what does that say about where we are in that journey as a country?
So from what I understand, the main reason we are building such pipelines in the U.S. is to decrease dependence on foreign oil. Even though we're the third largest producer of oil in the world, we're the #1 importer of oil at the same time. So it's fighting a losing battle, essentially. These pipelines are temporary measures. They don't produce long-term economic stability, and inevitably the oil will run out. And once a burst happens, if a burst happens, that damage will be much greater than any economic benefit that we might see in the short term. The concerning thing is that since 1986, there's been over 8,000 incidences of oil spillage in the U.S. That's over 300 incidents a year, dumping more than 76,000 barrels per year, almost more than 3 million gallons. That's about 300 barrels a day being spilled into our environment. And the reasons for oil spills, about 40% of oil leakages are caused by things that can't really be avoided. Things like corrosion, equipment failure, and just natural forces.
Right.
Another 20 to 30% of oil spillage was caused by people digging in areas that they didn't realize a pipeline was.
Oh, okay.
So when you say equipment failure, I don't know if you guys have heard, there was that spill or burst in Alabama just yesterday.
Yes.
And that was due to a track hoe actually hit the pipeline and ignited the gasoline. When you say equipment failure, do you mean something like that, or do you mean something else?
Equipment failure accounts for 17.1%. That's when the pipeline itself fails.
Okay, so that's not a man-made or not
A leak in a valve or a
Okay.
faulty weld. But like I was saying, about 20 to 30% of other spills are caused by incidents just like that, where someone inadvertently hits the pipeline, causes the burst. And because this is an underground pipeline, incidents like that are a lot more common. They're at a lot larger risk.
And you wouldn't be aware of that
You wouldn't be aware
for a
until
while.
If you were to dig it up, you'd probably know.
Yeah.
But if a pipeline if it were to break due to corrosion, you might not know right away.
Or if it was slowly leaching, you wouldn't be aware for a while.
Of course not, no.
Like in the case of Enbridge, the Enbridge oil spill in Kalamazoo, or the number 5 pipeline under the Mackinac Bridge. You know, they say the average age of these pipelines are 40 some plus
Yeah.
years, and what is their viability?
Yeah.
Before they all go. That's a scary thought.
Yeah,
Of course.
Definitely.
I actually have a video. It's a helpful graphic to kind of illustrate exactly how often these spills occur. And what you're going to see is every one of those dots is an oil spill. The size is indicating of the amount of oil.
And this can be above ground or below ground.
This could be above ground, this could be below ground. Oil spills like these have accounted for over $7 billion in economic damage.
7 billion in damage.
7 billion in damage.
Wow.
Yeah. You can see that number.
Oh, right here.
It'll just keep going up. And this is just from 1986. And as we continue to focus on domestic oil production, those rates of spills are going to increase. Since 2009, we've seen oil pipeline accidents shoot up almost 60%. And that's in direct correlation to the amount of domestic oil we produce. And as you can see, the map continues to get more dense with oil spills. And like I was saying earlier, those toxins are still in those environments for the most part. You could still go to the Kalamazoo River and find clumps of oil.
Right.
Great. Well, Grant, thank you so much for that perspective. I think we're going to move forward over to Janie to talk about sort of the implications on public health of oil spills.
Definitely. So one of the things that I wanted to be really cognizant of when I was first starting to research this was, being in the public health arena, there's often a lot of fear-mongering. So obviously when we talk about HIV or Ebola or whatever kind of the hot button issue, Zika, there's often a lot of not mistruths, but a lot of falsehoods that people perpetrate. So one thing that I wanted to look at when we're talking about this pipeline, like how likely is it that it would burst? So I know that Grant gave us some stats. I just wanted to add just a couple more. So I know you mentioned that since 2009, there's been a 60% increase. According to the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, so the PHMSA, they've reported that there's been more than 3,300 incidents of leaks and ruptures at oil and gas pipelines since 2010. And then specifically in North Dakota alone, which is the epicenter of the fracking boom, between 2012 and 2014, they've recorded over 300 oil spills. So from a public health perspective, obviously contaminated drinking water would be the biggest public health disaster that could happen. And some health implications of petrochemicals leaching into water include, toxicology studies on water contaminated by petrochemicals have found that chemicals chemicals associated with cancer, so various kinds of cancer. There have been studies that showed higher likelihoods of childhood leukemia in children that lived near oil fields, liver cancer, throat cancer, just really a plethora, skin irritation ranging from rashes to burns, eye irritation, potential respiratory toxins or irritants, and kidney toxins. So overall, not something that you want to be exposed to. In general, just talking about having access to clean drinking water, I think something that's obviously very topical and related to this would be the Flint water crisis. So obviously we're talking about oil contamination versus lead, but it's still fundamentally the fact that these people have no access to clean water, and they're in an underserved region. And so I think that's something that we really do need to focus on, because you're saying there's $7 billion that it takes to clean this up since 1986. In these regions, how quickly is the response going to happen? Is the response going to be as strong immediately in this area as it would be in a more populated area? Is the urgency going to be there? And from a public health perspective, that's just something that I would want to know more about. And no one is really talking about it much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's equally concerning is that if there were to be a spill, the methods they use to clean up are largely just spraying other different chemicals, which carry with them their own
risk and
health crisis.
Yeah, absolutely.
For me personally, I think I have to keep coming back to Enbridge, because this was an issue that impacted West Michigan locally, and where the spill occurred was outside of Battle Creek, and
do you know what year that was?
It was 5 years ago.
Okay.
So that impact wasn't felt as immediate because of the location of where the spill occurred, but it did. Kalamazoo River transfers right out to Lake Michigan, and so that it killed the river. The residual effects of that, we don't know what they are, but people cannot fish that river anymore. They used it as a waterway for canoeing, for all kinds of water type activities, and just the natural beauty of the Kalamazoo River. And so many activities occur in the downtown region as this river flows through. I mean, a lot of their just the public activities that occur, it's a gathering place for them. And who knows what happened down the river. So for me personally, I think we always need to come back to the local impact that can happen. And what if that happened to Grand Rapids? What if there was a oil line that burst north up by, Rockford or someplace, and what would happen to our Grand River? That's a beautiful waterway, and what would the long-term impact be, and how would citizens of West Michigan feel about that?
Yeah.
Those are things that you need to keep people reminding them.
Yeah,
This
put it
can
into
happen in your
perspective.
backyard.
Yeah.
And I think one of the unfortunate truths too when we're talking about water contamination, because it is so difficult, no matter if you're talking about lead contamination or oil contamination, that there is, at least obviously in the example of Flint, there was such a delay in action because they recognized almost immediately that the monetary cost of fixing that mistake was going to be immense. And that was in Flint, which is a highly populated area. So if we're talking now about the Dakota Access Pipeline, what is the population of that area versus Flint? Considerably lower.
Right, and what you find is that immediate reaction, people are shocked, they're upset, and the calls start happening, emergency management comes in, the federal dollars start coming in, the companies start owning up or,
Publicly
cleaning
apologizing.
up, and then after 3 weeks, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's off the front page, you don't hear about it again. And they're quietly cleaning up and negotiating deals with landowners, with agencies, on trying how to push this off the radar because it's about
It's bad PR.
it's bad PR. It's about big money.
Yeah,
Of course.
absolutely.
Yeah. And the thing is, the economic benefits of a pipeline like this are temporary, but the damages caused
Well, and who are
by
they benefiting? Are they benefiting, the people that are going to be most impacted?
It's eminent domain for private profit.
Right.
Yeah. And the jobs that they're giving are largely temporary, putting in these pipelines. All of the benefits are temporary, but the risks are permanent. The Kalamazoo River will never be the same. If a pipeline were to burst, the Missouri River would never be the same. And
Right.
that's a major tributary to
Right.
the Mississippi River.
Right.
The large spread environmental
Right.
disaster could be immense.
Did you have a stat again for how many would be affected by an oil spill in the Missouri?
Uh,
Because it's
27.
26 million, I
Yeah.
think, are downstream of the Missouri River.
Yeah. And one last thing, I know we're kind of bouncing around, but speaking specifically about psychological trauma of a spill like that. So part of what I do for my current job, I'm a research assistant, and I go to Flint and I actually conduct interviews with people, and so I've actually seen firsthand obviously not all that they've had to deal with, but I've walked into houses where they're frantically trying to figure out, like, can we move? Can we get out of here? Can we afford it? And oftentimes the answer is no. And I imagine that could potentially be the situation also in North Dakota for a lot of families if that's something that were to happen. So I think kind of keeping that in mind too, that it isn't just the physical effects, which are obviously immense, but also the psychological trauma that would accompany that and the amount of time that it would take to actually get back to a place where, they're a place of normal, I guess.
Yeah. Great. Thank you both so much.
Of course.
That was awesome. We're going to turn it over to Phyllis now for a little while so we can talk about sort of this larger cultural perspective, this picture. So I guess you've been to camp too. I do want to hear a little bit about what you experienced while you were at camp. I don't know if you want to start with that.
Sure, I'll
but-
give just a quick overview. The Gun Lake Band of Potawatomi Indians, along with the tribes across the country, have shown an interest in this story as it has unfolded over the past year. We became a little more interested in hearing the oversight for agencies and the permitting processes, the needs of the tribe and their requests for effective and meaningful tribal consultation with the agencies, with the Army Corps, with EPA. And so those are always of interest to tribes, and my tribe included, because this is an issue of sovereignty, of nations' rights, treaties that were signed and on both sides from the federal government and the tribe. Those are documents, those are beliefs that we fully support, we engage in the best way, as we always have. But history between the United States and tribes has always been an unacknowledged process. And many times now, they're not even acknowledged in school books. And so I believe that the true history of the United States and the history of the American Indian in this country has been misled, it's been diminished, and you know, we need to continue to, I'm not looking to put anything in anybody's face, and my tribe isn't either, but you know, those rights need to be acknowledged and honored through that federal consultation policy. So our tribe has been supporting the chairman, Dave Archambault, the second of the Standing Rock Sioux Nation, and his efforts to request these things from the federal government in solidarity and support nations. There are 522 tribal nations in the United States, and they are all supporting him. We've supported him through resolutions passed by our tribal councils, and that's what our tribe did over just before Labor Day weekend. And we decided to assist with bringing in resources that we could provide to the Standing Rock Sioux Nation. So a contingent of tribal citizens from the Gun Lake Band made our journey out there over Labor Day weekend. We went to pray, and the foremost, most prominent message that I have heard from their chairman, Archambault, was peaceful prayer and peaceful demonstration. Right. And so we were going in good faith to support them by praying. Yeah. We knew many tribes from the Great Lakes area. There are 34 tribes in the Great Lakes area. Many of those tribes have been out there for months supporting the tribes west of the Mississippi. They've been coming from all four directions of this United States to support them. We went to pray, and we did pray. We had water ceremonies with women from all four directions of this United States. It was so powerful to walk into the Cannonball River with 60 women and offer up what we could to the Creator and ask for a peaceful resolution here to join in our sister tribes in acknowledging their rights as Indigenous people, to honor the sacredness of the site that the Dakota Access Pipeline is crossing, and the desecration of burial remains that was acknowledged and identified. These people, there were people that had died and were buried there by their family. Their ancestors are here on that land, and to knowingly to understand that, you know, I hope that all humans understand that.
Yeah.
That, you know, if you respect who you are as an individual, you honor your family and your culture, where you come from, that means you're going to honor those people that went on before you, because they sacrificed many things. And that's something I always have to acknowledge, is what my ancestors did for me. And all Indigenous people do that. They acknowledge the sacrifices that their families have put on the line for them. And so for Standing Rock Sioux Nation, their ancestors were in the ground there during the Indian Wars. They were put in the ground defending the rights, the land of those people. You know, so for me, it was a huge desecration. Yeah. It was an inhumane thing to do. But we were there to pray. We were there to support them, and we thoroughly engaged with people from all over the country, and we participated in a peaceful protest walk from the Cannonball camp up to the barricade. And we had tribal elders and leaders who were providing traditional teachings throughout the whole weekend. It was truly an amazing place to be, to feel the power of good energy, to feel the power of so many tribal nations coming together for one cause. And while we were up there, we were done praying, we had done this walk. People were kind of disassembling, walking back down to the camp, and then there was somebody that came over a bluff and said that they were The machines were moving again, and we need everybody up there. So there were probably 200 to 300 people, I would think, that were at the barricade site where we were, and we did make our way up there. We stopped where the construction site was, and you could see these huge bulldozers, big earth movers. You know, they were creating a road across these bluffs. And there was a fence line, and on the other side of that fence line there were the biggest German Shepherds I've ever seen. And they had leather leashes that were probably that thick. These were not, you know, your average dog. And they were so intimidating, but they were sitting on the other side of the fence line with their security officer holding on to them tightly.
This isn't law enforcement. This is
No, these were private
security
private
officers.
security people. So, you know, we witnessed this. There was a point in time where people from the protest walk moved forward, and they moved across. They broke the fence line down. They were a group of women, older women. And then, of course, everybody else became very engaged, and so at that moment it was really frantic. There was a lot of high energy in the air as people were going over. The dogs were barking, they were jumping, they were the security people really had their dogs in check, but yet they were following as these people continued moving forward. And then there was a real rash, this sense of something changed, and then it just got real scary.
Yeah.
And I had provided a short take of that on a YouTube.
You wanna play that
And I don't know if anybody, you know, that would be something to look at, but like I said, that was something that I didn't plan on witnessing when I went there that day. I did not plan on or expecting to participate in something like this. I didn't, but.
Especially when they're
Critical.
having this huge call for nonviolent direct action this month. You know, they're calling everyone that can possibly make it to camp for
Right.
this nonviolent
But that
direct
had been the
action.
call all along. And so
Right.
what transpired over that weekend, if it was because this was the day before the president had issued an order for them to cease
Disperse.
construction.
Yeah.
And the next day they were back out there. And so that's what happened there.
So we'll play a minute or two of this then.
Get your money somewhere else. We're standing at the construction site of the Dakota Access Pipeline. It looks like there are at least 3 bulldozers that are, to people's surprise at this moment, actually bulldozing the land. There's a helicopter above, there's security here, and hundreds of people have been marching up when they heard that the construction site is actually active right now.
My name is Jacob Johns.
And where are you from?
I'm from Spokane, Washington. I'm Hopi and I'm from Oahu.
And can you describe what you see, what they're doing?
They're bulldozing. They're bulldozing and preparing to install a pipeline to go underneath the river.
And above we see a helicopter.
The helicopter itself has been following us and taking pictures, and we're filming them in return.
Come on, guys! We gotta stop this! We're standing and watching! Get in there! Stop this! Let's go!
People have gone through the fence, men, women, and children. The bulldozers are still going, and they're yelling at the men in hard hats. One man in hard hat threw one of the protesters down, and they're marching over the dirt mounds. Some of the security have dogs. The 6 bulldozers are pulling back right now. People are marching forward in their tracks. There are men, women, and children. More security trucks are pulling up. There are some protesters on horseback.
I think for me, the biggest thing I came away with when we ended up going back to our camp, and we had a good talk. The whole group that had come out there, we talked for a couple hours about what we witnessed, what we participated in, and how to deal with that. And when I got back to Michigan, the things I saw reported were inaccurate. I witnessed what I witnessed, and what I saw in paper, what I read online, it was inaccurate.
Yeah.
You know, they were saying that somebody shot a dog, or somebody shot somebody, and you know, it was just like there were so many things that were untrue. And I still find to this day the media has misrepresented this issue unfairly. I think in the last couple weeks, maybe the last week, there's been more accuracy, but also the tone has changed a little bit more. And I think that the intentions for the agencies and for the company has been a lot more aggressive, and a little more scarier. It's like they've stepped it up to the next level.
Sure.
So for me, you know, we stand together with our brothers and sisters. We believe in the indigenous rights of our nations. We believe in our water as sacred. Our Mother Earth is sacred. Everything that comes from her, we can't live without as a human. And that doesn't matter what race, what culture, where you live. You know, this is a real time and place for all of us. And you know, I'm scared for my kids and my grandkids that they will not have what I have. These resources are diminishing. Somebody has to take a stand somewhere, and hopefully through effective, meaningful consultation and working together, we can do these things. But the tactics that are currently being used are illegal, they're unconstitutional, and they have to find a resolution, and I continue to pray for Standing Rock. I think the only other thing I'd like to say for this is in regards to earthjustice.org is a great website to understand and learn more about the issues. The tribes across the nation are making the National Congress of American Indians, this has been on their radar. Consistently, we've had national calls. They've done a national call out to tribes to encourage them to call or write President Obama, requesting that he intervene immediately. And
As he did with Keystone.
Right, and this was a call that came out on Monday. I would encourage everybody who's listening to spread the word and say it's never too late to make them calls, to write them emails. You know, you notify, you write your congressmen, whether they're Republican, Democrat, Independent, green, white, blue, black, what, I don't know. Get them on the horn and tell them you oppose this. And let's pray for those people for peaceful resolution.
So that was earthjustice.org.
Earthjustice.org is a great place to go.
Great.
For information.
Phyllis, thank you so much
Sure.
for that
You bet.
eyewitness account. I do want to acknowledge we have a new panel member coming in right now, Stephen Durst, who's a regular on CTV. Welcome, Stephen Durst.
Yes, I'm a founding member of the Society for Economic Equality and CTV. 23 years we've been at this on issues like this. Private prisons, mainly the problem with American democracy is that money controls too much of it. We definitely stand with the Standing Rock Sioux, and I hear there are 250 sovereign treaty nations represented actually at the spot, and even more who are like us virtually standing with them. I just want to put it in a larger context of our political structure. We know that Bernie Sanders is on the side with the Standing Rock Sioux. We know that Jill Stein is on the side with the Standing Rock Sioux.
Yeah.
She has been charged with vandalism for spray painting on hashtag no DAPL, Dakota Access Pipeline. The segment we just saw, Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! She was charged for participating in a riot, for reporting on what she saw there. We see that these intimidation techniques are being done while the media is only reporting a certain aspect of it. Obama today did say something about, well, we're thinking about maybe moving the pipeline, but the people at Sunoco and the pipeline company, they say, we didn't hear anything about this. It sounds just like Obama saying something off the top of the cuff. He did stop the pipeline briefly, and people thought maybe now the demonstrations will stop and they'll just go through, but the demonstrations have not stopped. Well, this is a critical moment. This is like America's Tiananmen, when the Chinese students said, we want democracy here. They were speaking abstractly. This is a very concrete issue that everyone should be able to understand. It's not just the 26 million people downstream from the pipeline who are being affected by this, but the consequences of what's happening here will be, when will they shove the next pipeline down your throat on the river where you get your water from?
Right. I want to interject right there.
Please
If you
do.
are feeling moved by this information and you have any questions that you want to ask this panel right here, you can get a hold of us at 616-459-4881. That's 459-4881.
I saw that the deputation was sent to Hillary Clinton's campaign office in New York too. Not only would nobody talk to them, they wouldn't even take a letter sent. But we're being asked to stand in solidarity and prayer with these people who are trying to protect not just their water, not just our water, but the very idea of popular input into infrastructure. So that's not very...
We do have a caller on the line. Caller Karen.
Hi, so I had a question.
What's your question?
Yes. I've
Can't
noticed,
hear.
first of all, that this issue hasn't been really represented in the mainstream media much at all. But when it is, that a lot of the conversation is centered on climate change, and that it's less on the sovereign rights of American Indians, and I just wondered if you guys could speak to that.
Karen, can you repeat your question? I literally only heard the buzzwords climate change.
I can't hear either.
Yeah, I can't.
Oh, should I say it again?
Yes,
I can
please.
hear
Go
it.
ahead, Karen.
So I've noticed in the mainstream media, when this issue, if this issue is presented, that it centers a lot on climate change and less on the sovereign rights of American Indians, and I just wondered if we could speak to that, because it seems like that's the bigger issue, but if it's in the media, that's not really what's being talked about.
Okay, so
That's a good point.
yeah, good point.
And then what is the point I was trying to make this? Not just through water, it's not just the water downstream, it's not just the idea of democracy and people deciding what's going to be and how it's going to be, but yeah, it's an existential issue for not just the human race, but every creature on the planet. Yes, climate change is the issue. Bill McKibben, the great climate change activist, said about the XL pipeline and burning these tar sands that are going to be, what they're intending to put through the Dakota Access Pipeline. He says, if we burn these tar sands, that's game over. That is game over for us.
Thank you so much for your question, Karen. At this time, we do have one more panel member that I want to sneak in for this last 15 minutes. So we are going to give a Skype call to a friend of mine, Wania Whipping Braids Locke. She has been spending the past few months at Sacred Stone Camp. She's an educator. She teaches Lakota language on Pine Ridge Reservation, former co-worker of mine at Red Cloud Indian School. I'm hoping that she will be able to speak to what camp really needs right now, how you can get involved if you can't physically be present at the Sacred Stone Camp. So we are going to go ahead and give her a video call, and hopefully we'll be able to have her audio and ask her a few questions. Hi.
Hi.
Oh, I can't quite hear her.
How about now?
Oh, perfect. Hi, Wania. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
You're in like our last 15 minutes here. You're our last panel member. We've been talking a little bit about the environmental impact of pipelines on populations in general, the health implications of oil spills. We've been talking about your rights as sovereign nations. I was hoping that you could share with us a little bit, since you've spent so much time at Sacred Stone Camp, about how people can get involved, what kind of donations are needed, sort of what's happening at camp the past couple of days. A lot has really happened. I know you said platforms are being lowered for drills to go in next couple of days, so if you could speak to that. Oh, and she's frozen.
Give it a second.
Give it a second.
So when we talk about sovereign nations, we should also talk about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, because the kind of violence they're using to push this through is a foretaste of what we can expect with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which, as I think it was Bernie Sanders who said, it's NAFTA on steroids. It subverts the sovereign power of any nation signing it to control its own environmental and industrial policy.
Okay.
We've got
There we go.
Arnia.
Okay, so the reason why my reception's really bad is because I'm currently on the ground right now. What took place today was water protectors went to go pray, literally to go pray. There was no initial, no other intentions of doing a sit-in. It was to go pray, and then they were brutally attacked with pepper spray, mace, and rubber bullets. In fact, a CNN reporter who was there got shot by a rubber bullet today.
Wow.
It was just so we keep doing these confrontations, and we are unarmed, and we do go at it in a prayerful way. And it's just really hard to control the young ones, and that's the biggest issue, is controlling the young ones, because right now all they feel is that anger. That's all they feel. They don't, and they're allowing their emotions to control them. But we have been really, really holding our ground and saying, you got to pray, you got to do this, and you just got to hold tight. We are nonviolent direct action. That means physically standing in the way. Remember, Gandhi did say that civil disobedience is a sacred duty once the governing systems have become corrupt. So Standing Rock Sioux Tribe has exhausted every legal possibility, starting with back in 2014. We have always contested it. Our THPO officers have always, that's Tribal Historic Preservation Officers, have filed where our grave sites are, where our prayer circles are. Court evidence was used on September 2nd. Our archaeologists, Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, did file in the court where these grave sites were. And then September 3rd is when Dakota Access showed up with bulldozers and deliberately bulldozed over those same sites using the coordinates from court. So they use court evidence to bulldoze over those sites. And then that's when we were met with the attack dogs. And these attack dogs were not trained properly. They were just trained to be vicious. So a really well-trained attack dog will come in and attack, and then once a signal is given, a attack dog will retreat. Well, these dogs, so DAPL workers were assaulted, but not by us. They were assaulted by their own attack dogs. So they were assaulted, but not by us, by their attack dogs. Once the DAPL workers had pulled back from attacking us, so did we. We totally stepped back, and you can see in all the video clips that we had our hands up and we stepped back. Once DAPL stopped attacking us, so did we. We were just basically defending ourselves. That was on September 3rd. I was a part of the action that took place on Saturday, where they had 120 arrested. I was out there with them, and I literally had to run 2 miles as they chased us down in trucks with dogs and helicopters and planes, and you name it, it happened, which is really funny because private security does not have jurisdiction to detain anyone whatsoever. Only only deputized law enforcement officers can. So basically what they're doing is kidnapping people. So I literally ran 2 miles nonstop. And you talk about historical trauma, living again, that's exactly the way I felt when as soon as I hit Highway 1806, I knew I was free. I knew I made it, and I knew I was going to be safe. I was not there on the Thursday's attacks, but I did help set up camp. So I did help set up camp, and then I had to come back to work because I'm a full-time teacher. So I was not there on the Thursday attacks. But Dakota Access is 1,172 miles long, pushing 450,000 to 570,000 barrels of sweet Bakken crude. Sweet Bakken crude looks and feels exactly like gasoline. So it's more lethal than sludge oil that's currently and most likely like in all the pipelines that are going up now. So sweet Bakken crude moves 10 times faster than sludge crude. So once this one breaks, it's going to spill 10 times faster. Dakota Access LLC did go on to court documents in a testimony stating that they used the cheapest pipeline that they could buy to save cost, and they used tat welding to weld the pipe. So tat welding has cracks in it. This is what you see on like jungle gyms for children's playgrounds. So tat welding is not sustainable for an oil pipeline whatsoever, and especially putting it under the Missouri River. A lot of people didn't realize this, but we did lose the Mississippi River. Dakota Access LLC literally jammed that pipeline right under the Mississippi. What was illegal about that act is, one, they did have a permit and they did have an easement for the Mississippi. They did not have a permit to use fracking chemicals to break up the earth. They did not have that permission to use that, and that's exactly what they did, because the first drill bit that happened in the Mississippi broke because that's how hard the earth was. So then they had to bring in all these chemicals to come and stand in the way. And then so one of the ways that you can really help right now, wherever you're at, if you cannot make it to North Dakota right now because the drill pad is being built currently as we speak. The drill pad is being built. They made it to the Missouri River. It is currently being built right now. You need to call your Congress people right now. Whoever your representatives, whatever state you are in, you need to call your Congress people and let them know No Dakota Access LLC. You also need to call the Department of Justice and inform them of the injustice that's being done in North Dakota, like people being held in dog kennels and have numbers written on them like a Holocaust. So be sure, like, just be really proactive on the phone call. Like, this is what you can do.
Are you still
Sacred
wanting
Stone
people to
is a
flood?
secure.
Are you still wanting people to flood the phone lines of Morton County? Do we still have people that are unaccounted for that have been
Yes.
arrested in the last week?
Yeah. Well, you still need to call the Congress people. Like, you
Right.
still need to.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the secure funding page for donations when it comes to monetary donations is Sacred Stone, GoFundMe, Ocheti Shak Point GoFundMe, Uyaka Eagleman GoFundMe, and Washdewi Young GoFundMe. Those are plus 5, including you can send money directly to Standing Rock Sioux Tribe. So there's 5 accounts right there that are totally legit.
Okay.
There is over 200 other accounts that are up that none of us know where those accounts are going to. We are just totally baffled, and it does disturb us that someone is making a profit off of us and all our hard work and dedication. We have been going strong for 7 months strong, and it's incredible. When I was in camp, I moved into camp July 22nd. That's when I moved into camp. That's the day of the permit. That morning at 10 a.m. at July 22nd is when I got the email from the Army Corps of Engineers stating that they're granting the permit. And so that's when I moved into camp, because like I knew I had to. Like I just knew I had to. And I was there when we got the 48-hour notice from Dakota Access LLC, and I was actually on ground zero protesting day in and day out for the first 2 weeks. And then I had to come back to work, and then every weekend I go back. Every single weekend I go back. So donations, what do we need? Like if you do not feel comfortable setting monetary donations, I totally understand that. If you want to buy items, you need to think of like winter stuff. You need to think of winter boots, winter work boots, winter work boots. You need to think of long johns in every single size. You need to think of socks. You need to think of, I recommend, unless it's a 4-season tent, don't even bother buying us tents. Make sure, if it is, you make sure it's a winter tent. But just long johns in every single size, and then remember those little handy feet warmers.
Yeah.
Because even though it hasn't snowed yet, it still gets down to like 10 to 16 degrees.
All right, Juanita, thank you so
So
much. We are wrapping up right here. I do want to say that all of the crowdsourcing sites that Juanita mentioned and numbers for our congressman, you will be able to find on the CTV Facebook page right after this show. Juanita, thank you so much for calling in.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
No, thank you for having me, and thank you for bringing Dakota Access and Awareness. Doksha.
Doksha, friend. Well, thank you all so much for viewing. Thank you all to all of my panel members for being here. I really appreciate the awareness we're bringing to this issue. And call your congressman, donate what you can, make it out to camp if you are able to. Keep everyone in your prayers, I guess.
Now some people in Oregon, the Bundys,
Yes.
took over a
Yes.
wild with guns,
Yes.
and they stayed there, and basically they were treated with kid gloves until the very end. One
exactly.
guy was shot when he aimed his gun, but the extreme prejudice with which these
Absolutely.
people are being met shows that the corporations are not going to be treating us with kid gloves in the future. They've got their policies. For 23 years, we've been warning you that this is coming. Private prisons, total global capital control, and the abrogation of democracy.
We're already seeing the ridiculous injustices that are happening at this Morton County Sheriff's Department with all
Scary.
of these people being arrested. Yeah, scary, horrifying.
Well, you know, the idea is that if we don't stand up for each other's rights, no one's going to have any.
Miigwech, Bamapi for having me on the show. I'm very honored.
Good job.
Thank you for being here so much.
Welcome. All right.
Oh, we're still talking? Go. Great. Steven, thanks for being here. Great,
Thank
you
you.
for being here.
Always been fun.
Good job, Grant.
Appreciate it.
You look like you could be
I
a
think we did all right.
I think you did a great job.
Oh,
you.
yeah.
We got the facts and the
Really good
figures.
job.
I
Yes.
tried to maintain an air of gravitas.
We're at that.
Speak for the places you feel
You
like.
can call it Granty Town.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, that's
Put
right.
that on my
It's
business card.
Granty.
It's in
Could be the
Pine
name of your
Ridge.
company.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's so
We're,
Granty Town.
Porcupine
So-
School's over in
I always like
Ohio, our
Grant
sister
Incorporated
school,
to,
yeah.
I know.
Take the name, make it the brand.
I found out their name was
Right.
but
Okay.
my sister
The Grant brand.
I feel like I give a lot of nonprofit.
has a different time.
Okay.
She was,
Yeah, that's true. Everything can get us there.
Yes.
Her name was
You have matching phones?
Wow.
I
Yeah.
bet she's not alive anymore, but yeah, it was
Lydia and I were working in the same elementary school, and we got to know
Oh,
each
yeah,
other
and then
really
they
well. We
could
directed
play
a
for
play
everyone to
together
start their
in
own
Lakota,
shows.
which was really fun.
I mean, like, yeah, when we started, we were sort of like the young church, but now we're sort of like the old church. You people, you can start your
and I
own shows.
lived out there, worked out there for a couple years. But
Classes here that don't cost much to learn how to do it. Get your show going.
so for me,
Because we're seeing more and more of it now. Streaming. So when they say, call the meeting, and you want to say,